talking about, again, being aggressive, do you think that came about because of the low deer numbers, and in order to find deer, you had to push the envelope?
Yeah, I think so. That had a lot to do with it because I'd go times of days I wouldn't see a deer, and I thought, well, I'm going to go push this a little further in there, I think that had a lot to do with it.
And in regards to that, could you describe to everybody what does a bedding thicket look like to you in the mountains?
In the mountains, one of our biggest bedding areas, these laurel thickets. We got some giant laurel thickets, and those deer love those laurels because they feel safe in there. But they do bed on the ridge tops too because they like to see, some of those bucks will get right on even though it's open, they like to see a long ways. But ridge tops and laurel thickets, and then we have some where the timber's been cut, those cut over areas. They like to bed in those, that's one of the biggest things. But I'd probably say our number one bedding area would be those big giant laurel thickets.
Is the laurel thickets one of the, I guess, more consistent bedding areas that you've had success hunting in and around compared to like the ridge tops and the clear cuts?
Probably so. Yeah, I would say overall they're a little better to read those because there's an edge on those laurels, and then those trails will come right out of there, and sometimes you get over on where they've cut the timber, you can be scratching their head which way they're going to come out sometimes, and the food is so big and vast in some of that cut over areas. But those laurel thickets are a good way to to find the distinct trails coming out of there, and stuff.
So we've hunted a decent amount of laurel the last 5 or 6 years on public land in a bunch of different states, including Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it's always one of those things that's challenging because, you'll get in one laurel thicket, it might be chest high to you, maybe head high. In some places, it's 7-8 foot tall.
Mm-hmm.
But when I would say the challenge is some of it seems so dense, it's hard to try to get an opportunity to shoot into it or get opportunities to set up somewhere closer inside of it versus the edge.
Mm-hmm.
And you're talking about sometimes pushing the envelope and you're trying to get in there with them.
Yeah.
What does a situation like that look like? Is it like kind of more patchy laurel? Or is it that real dense laurel that you're trying to get into?
Sometimes you'll have some that's more open. If it's more mature or whatever, it'll get larger, and there'll be some openings in those little valleys sometimes, enough to... I've shot a lot of deer right in the center of those laurel thickets before, where you could find a good opening and where they're crossing or something. But it's tough. Some of their mountains especially toward the Tennessee area up that way, it's just solid laurel. I mean, just about the only way to hunt it's off of the edge somehow, Find the buck sign off the edge or something. It can be tough. That's what's made it tougher than a lot of these Midwest states and stuff, where you can walk flat land. And I mean, it's tough hunting out there too, but our mountain region's tough in those big mountains and stuff.
And the interesting thing about you, which the listeners and viewers kind of come to understand this a little bit later on, but you've hunted all over the place.
Yeah.
It's not just North Carolina. You've hunted the Midwest, all over the South, kind of going up the Northeast a little bit.
Yeah.
Killed deer all over the place. But would you say, are you more passionate about trying to kill a good deer in North Carolina versus other states?
I think I'd rather, right here at my home, I wish I could kill a Boone and Crockett deer, which I've not ever done here in North Carolina. Had the opportunity one time and snapped on one with a gun. Snapped on a big buck that I felt like would have made Boone and Crockett. But, I think I'd rather shoot a 170-inch deer that I had here than I would a 190-inch deer in Kansas or something. That's the way I kind of feel at your home state,
I can relate with that. What's the story on that buck you snapped on?
I went up on some public land, and there was a guy that he got a picture of this buck on private land, but it joined the public at the base of the mountain. And he said, I can't find this deer. He said, go up in there and see if you can find it. I think it's on that public land up there real high. And in that mountain range, it's very steep in there. So I got all the way to the top of that mountain, and I found some big scrapes, and I found giant trees rubbed. Well, there was a
And mind you, this is late December.
yeah. It was
This is
first
like
Christmas.
right before Christmas.
Well, there was a big rock cliff there with a lot of laurel, but it was flat right there, and some trails coming out of those laurels. But this huge rub, I said, this got to be this deer. So I set up in there. The first time I set in there, here comes a doe out, and I saw that buck coming, and we guessed it. We had pictures of it, guessing it in the 170s. And he comes straight at me, and I waited for him to turn, and he turned at 30 yards. And I have a little 243 when my dad bought me when I was 10 years old. And he turned broadside, and I snapped on him. I had a bullet. I don't know, the bullet was bad or something, and he took off, went over the mountain, and
Well, what he didn't tell you was it was like 10 degrees that morning.
yeah, it was 12 degrees when I left the truck.
And he had hunted that morning, and he went back in that evening. He hunted in a little bit different area trying to find where it's coming in, and he had took his gun and put it in the gun case. And we think, because the guy that gave him the tip on where that deer was is like, he holds some world records from shooting guns. And he said what he thinks happened was moisture got in that firing pin and just frozen it. Now, when here's what's funny, he found the bullet, went back up there and found the bullet, and there was what'd you do? You threw the bullet, right? And he got so mad, he threw the bullet.
I just threw it down.
Yeah, and he comes up there, and he found his bullet again, and it had the impression on the back of the primer, but it wasn't deep. So what we think is either oil had trapped some water in there. You know, if you don't really dry your gun out before you go and hunt, sometimes that'll happen. But a little bit of water, I think, caused that primer to hit it slow, and it didn't go off. And this deer, I showed them a picture of that deer.
Did you?
Yeah,
He was a giant deer. And
he had like 12-inch brow tines. He was a monster.
yeah, we don't usually have that here. That was just an unusual situation. I tried him a little. We didn't have much longer that year to try him, because that was around Christmas, wasn't it?
It was December. It was December the 19th when you snapped on him.
But that's my biggest opportunity in North Carolina.
You had a couple other big deer opportunities down eastern North Carolina.
Yeah.
One question that comes to mind when you're talking about that is, that's a giant. I mean, that's a world-class deer. But you've killed a lot of really nice bucks up here in the mountains too, that are mature deer. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious, is there any consistent factor you see between all the bigger bucks or all the mature deer that you've either killed or had opportunities at over the years around here? What do they do different from all the other deer that makes them so hard to kill?
Well, these deer here just don't seem like we have as big a deer here. It's like they get 5 to 6 years old, and they might be 135 inches or something. And I don't know. Seem like rephrase that question exactly.
What he's saying is like, what does a big mature buck do differently than a 3 or 4 year old buck?
Oh yeah, okay.
That you're seeing from around here compared to anywhere else.
Yeah, they a lot of night movement from those big deer. I mean, I started using cameras. I've got hooked on. Jordan got me hooked on the cameras, and that tells me a lot about those big deer. Move at night a lot, until they get about pre-rut and stuff, and they get really hard to see, as they get older. We see those 2 and 3 year old deer come out in the daylight, and when they get about 4 to 5 right here, and we have a lot of pressure too, that makes a lot of difference, and it gets tough when they get 4 to 5 years old. And we got some places to hunt that you just can't hardly see a good deer until about November, when it gets close to the rut, and it makes a big deal. They're especially smart here. They're hard to see when they get about 5 years old.
Yeah, we've talked to guys all over the place now. I mean, we've been all over the eastern United States recording podcasts, talking to different guys. And I'm just curious, I want to run this by you because this comes up from time to time, and that is that you'll find where the deer are at. Most of the deer hanging out in this, like, laurel thicket, for instance. Mm-hmm. And then the big buck, like the old mature deer, he won't be like in there with them. He'll be off kind of by himself somewhere. Do you find that around here too?
Yeah, we sure do. Yeah, he'll be in a different spot, or it can be really tough. I mean, one place I had last year, I got several mature bucks. The biggest buck I wanted to shoot wouldn't show up. You know, he wouldn't show up for about once a week, or it's just funny how they do when they get that age, and they get smart and sometimes wise to those cameras, I think, here, you know. So yeah, same situation here. It gets tough to get the one you want. That's the one that won't show up. Seems like.